And it is the Sunday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. And it's, what is it? It is February 21st, 2026. Can you believe that, Heather?
No, I can't believe it.
We've endured more than a year of this monstrous administration.
Also, I have to do my
calamity.
taxes. April will be here before you know it
Well, I wish you well, and
with my taxes.
But what are we going to talk about today?
Okay, so today there are some good stuff. I mean, have we ever had a boring I wish we could have a boring coffee clutch where we had to drum up content, drum up ideas, and just brainstorm. Okay, Trump's tariffs have been struck down. Prince Andrew has been arrested. Are we going to war with Iran? And what can we expect for the State of the Union? And then we have special guest David Hogg, survivor of the Parkland shooting, who runs Leaders We Deserve. I'm very excited that we get to talk to him.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Let's start then. You want to talk about the tariffs?
I want to talk about the tariffs, and Trump is mad.
See how angry. I was just going to say he's livid, and he's blaming the Supreme Court that he appointed. I mean, 2 of the 3 justices he appointed voted against him and said that he had exceeded his authority under the 1977 International Emergency Power Act. Well, obviously he's livid.
Oh, he's so mad. I mean, it was Tantrum City. I saw clips of him, and then he was using, it's a disgrace, and they're not patriots, and it's shameful, and he is mad to not get his way.
I'm sorry, President Trump, Donald Trump. The Supreme Court really does have jurisdiction under the Constitution to tell you what your job is and to tell you if you have exceeded your authority, and you did exceed your authority. And now that $200 billion that the United States collected from basically American consumers. Remember, the tariffs are a tax on imports. So that $200 billion, we can't hold on to it now.
Well, so what do we do, Bob? Are we going to Venmo it? I mean, then he'll make it into a big, now the Trump gift certificate, the Trump coupon is now coming back at you in this form. I mean,
it's going to be very, very complicated, Heather, because the corporations, American corporations, importing components and all kinds of things, did pay the $200 billion initially, although most of that was passed on to consumers. Now, if the corporations go and say that we demand a refund, are they going to refund consumers?
Or will they not demand that because they're all in Trump's pocket anyway, and they'll say it's fine, it's water under the bridge. That darn SCOTUS, you are wronged. This is wrong. We will just cover this.
Well, regardless of how this works out in terms of who is going to be refunded, it means that the funding stream that Donald Trump was counting on in terms of reducing the budget deficit and the debt is no longer available. And that means that the debt worsens, the deficit worsens. There is not any kind of cushion for the American economy. And this is a huge problem.
Huge problem, but also a chink in his armor. I mean, you think about, I really do. I like to think of him in giant metal walking around, but there's an issue with it now. He's not immutable, and he does not like being in that place.
I think of him walking around naked, and nobody willing to say the emperor has no clothes. Because
I'm picturing him in chainmail. I'm not doing naked.
Well, I think the Supreme Court just said, essentially, you have no authority. You've been putting on this kind of show for everybody with regard to tariffs. It's also going to dramatically change international relations. Remember, Donald Trump was using this authority to reward his friends, to penalize his enemies, to say to Canada, well, I'm going to raise tariffs on you. Switzerland, I didn't like how you sounded. Your president sounded on the telephone. I'm raising tariffs on you. It was Donald Trump's personal little vendetta machine and award machine, and he doesn't have it anymore.
But what do you think the people, the electorate, is going to think? I mean, are they going to think this guy is a buffoon because we wanted the tariffs because we've been mistreated and they didn't actually understand, on average, we didn't actually understand that they were an import tax, right? I think people thought, oh, this is good. We're finally getting ours and and showing other countries and we'll get richer for it. And now he's not allowed to do it.
Well,
I mean,
he's going to try to spin it that way, Heather. But the fact of the matter is that what he actually said to the American public repeatedly is that these tariffs are going to rebuild a manufacturing in the American economy. And the fact of the matter is, look back on 2025, and manufacturing continued to shrink as a percentage of the total economy. Manufacturing jobs vanished in 2025. So even his alleged reason for the tariffs turned out to be just evaporating.
Right. Well, so, it's so fun to watch him be held accountable. I mean, it's nice when yesterday when I opened my laptop and you see basically a synonym for Trump held accountable in this one way. Now, will it stick and what does it mean? And will everyone see that as him having been a fool in what he was doing and wrong and overstepping and inappropriate? I don't know. But having him held accountable, including, as we see, Prince Andrew arrested this week, first royal in the UK to be arrested since Charles the First.
Charles the First in 1649.
Right, 400 years ago. Were you part of that? Were you part of that administration? I couldn't remember if you were.
Charles the First. I mean, he was arrested, and he also, I hate to say it, he was beheaded in 1649 too. I mean, it was a bad year for Charles.
Well, but also it was high treason, and they were saying you, the sovereign, can't just do what you want. You're a servant of the people, and so treason. I mean, he was going against the Commonwealth. Usually, you have this idea that it's going against the king. No, he had gone against the people.
Well, it wasn't exactly the people in 49. It was the aristocrats around Charles.
Some of the people.
It was the dukes and it was all of the landholders, the big landholders, and it was the oligarchy. And today's oligarchy is still pretty much behind Donald Trump. But what's interesting? You look at what has happened, not just with regard to Prince Andrew, but also with regard to South Korea. The former president of South Korea, basically
President Yoon,
being held accountable for trying to stage a coup. Donald Trump, Prince Andrew is being held accountable. We don't know exactly because the prosecutor in Great Britain hasn't told us exactly, but from the Epstein files, it looks like he's being accountable for two things. One, his abuse of young girls, and secondly, his taking official documents and leaking official documents to Jeffrey Epstein for the purpose of enriching Epstein.
But can I correct you on that one? Correct you. Can I add to your sentence?
Yep.
So for the purpose of enriching Epstein and for the purpose of keeping himself in this power loop, let's be really clear. It is not just, I'm going to give you the state secrets, allegedly, to do with what you want to make yourself richer. It's like, so then you love me and then I love you and then we're in it together and we have all our secrets and I am powerful. I mean, it's using state secrets, the stuff you have to better your country, to enrich yourself, ultimately. That's really what it is.
That's right. Ultimately, to enrich yourself. It's a conflict of interest you have. And this is, Prince Andrew was a special envoy for Great Britain. And under the auspices of his special envoy capacity, he did make a deal, essentially, a deal that was a conflict of interest with his official duties. Now, I want you to take that to the United States. Has Donald Trump had conflicts of interest that were actually interfered with his official duties? I mean, put to one side how many times he appears in the Epstein files that have been so far revealed. There are 2.5 million files that still the Justice Department is sitting on. But Donald Trump is Prince Andrew dressed up as President of the United States. Why can't this country hold Donald Trump accountable? It's almost as if Donald Trump is thumbing his nose at the Constitution. And here we are, we're saying, unlike South Korea, unlike Great Britain, we can't hold this man accountable.
Unlike Brazil with Bolsonaro. I mean,
Yeah.
if these countries can find these authoritarians and find these people who are initiating coups and doing insurrections, and they can hold them accountable. By the way, Trump was not happy about Bolsonaro, right? And was trying to help him not go to jail. I mean, if they can do it, why can't we? This is America.
This is supposed to be a democracy. This is supposed to be. Now,
that's what I'm saying.
But Pam Bondi, obviously, Justice Department is not going to arrest or indict or even have a criminal investigation of Donald Trump, clearly. But what about the state attorneys general? Why shouldn't and why can't the state attorneys general, following on what the royal prosecutor did in Great Britain, following on what the South Koreans did, just basically gather evidence against Donald Trump? And
I know. I was driving. I remember being 16 and I was driving and I was staying at my bestie's house and they had a no left turn sign, and I truly, very ignorantly, thought that residents were excluded from that. So I turned left, boop, 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 and actually it was an undercover cop, which scared me. And he pulled me over and I said, I'm so sorry, but I'm a resident here. I'm staying here for 2 weeks. And he said, ma'am, no one's exempt from the law.
Nobody is above the law. Ma'am,
no one's exempt from the law is what he told. Those were his words, except the people in the highest positions of power? I mean, me turning left gets a ticket?
This is interesting because when Prince Andrew was arrested, what did the Prime Minister of Great Britain say? Nobody is against the law. What did some of the victims of Epstein say? Nobody is above the law. What did other people in Great Britain, the major prosecutor there? Nobody is above the law. They are using what should be our basic principle in this democracy. Nobody is above the law, and they are basically holding people accountable who are in very high positions of authority, but we aren't.
And my English husband, he couldn't believe it, that the Andrew formerly known as Prince, he was surprised. He was like, wow, this is big. This is big. And so when do we get our American moment of this is big? Well, I guess the tariffs is one version. I'll take the tariffs.
Well, tariffs, it holds them accountable a little bit. But remember, this is the same Supreme Court that said a year ago, more than a year ago, that Donald Trump or any president is exempt for anything he does, but it has to be within his authority as president. Right. And the fact of the matter is that what Donald Trump has done in terms of raking in over $4 billion for himself and his family, and conflicts of interest, and corruption, plus whatever he did with Jeffrey Epstein, that's not within his official authority. So
many examples,
I don't think the Supreme Court blanket immunity works for Donald Trump.
So I'm scared about what's happening with Iran, or what could happen. And he's making motions, right? We don't quite know. Most people are saying it doesn't look like something's going to happen, but all these ships, minus some of them, right, minus the big aircraft carrier, are moving in that direction. More ships than we've had in that area and more control than we've had in a long time.
It's the biggest armada we have ever assembled. And again, back to the theme of no accountability, Congress has not given Donald Trump the authority to declare war, to go to war on Iran. Congress never gave Donald Trump the authority to abduct the president of Venezuela. Congress, Donald Trump just takes this authority.
With the tariffs.
As he did with the tariffs.
I know. And then at the same time, so we have this happening, and we're really going to have to see, more will be revealed, right? We have the closing ceremony of the Olympics tomorrow, and then the State of the Union coming up, State of the Union address. Do Do we have
But
to watch it? Are you going to watch it, Bob?
I'm not going to watch it, but I just wanted to say something about this Board of Peace that Donald Trump has put together. It is a patent effort to circumvent the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council. What Donald Trump is trying to do, and he's not just aiming at Gaza, he's aiming at basically the entire world. He's putting himself as chairman of this international tribunal, which, he has veto authority. Him personally, he's taken veto authority. He has the authority to approve the agenda, is the authority to invite members, to dissolve the board, and he is going to be chairman in perpetuity.
I know
forever,
it.
even after he's president. I mean, this is a power grab beyond power grabs.
Can we just talk about the fact that we were just talking about we might be getting ready to go to war with Iran, cut to the Board of Peace. I mean, Board of Peace, it seems like it's board with peace, by the way, if he's going to get the grammar correct.
This is,
which
it's all
feels like is it's all
George
BS.
Orwell. It's the
Yes.
exact opposite. Everything has a meaning that is opposite to what it really is. Except Donald Trump did rename, or wants to rename, Congress has not gone with it, the Defense Department, the Department of War. There, he's labeling something that he actually intends.
Did you see they put in the front of the Department of Justice, they unfurled another dour picture of him at the DOJ. I'm
calling it the Department of Injustice.
The Department of
Just
Injustice,
like it's the Department of Homeland Insecurity. I mean, these places are now doing just the opposite of what they're supposed to do.
I know. So, and that's what's so interesting. So he's saying we got to rebuild Gaza. We're going to commit $10 billion. I'm getting all these people, and we're so focused on peace. And isn't it amazing?
And where's the $10 billion coming from, Heather? I mean,
tariffs.
Congress did not appropriate any money. This is a slush fund for Donald Trump, another slush fund. It is illegal.
Do you remember in June of last year when he initiated strikes on Iran, which was also scary, and then he said, "Done. We've handled their nuclear program, the nuclear threat. We don't have to worry anymore." Yeah,
he said it's over. And that a lot of people who were at that time associated with the National Security Council and the intelligence community said, no, we have not actually ended the nuclear threat. And Donald Trump contradicted them. He said, you don't know what you're talking about. Well,
you and I have made videos, and the team at Inequality Media Civic Action, about Donald Trump's lies. And they've done really well, right? Because it's listing the lies and it's putting them patently, I mean, it's just, you cannot deny them. They're right there. But I think another framework to think about is that he's a two-timer. And I wonder if that would resonate, because it is, of course it's lying. We know it's lying. But I keep thinking that it's this two-timing, obviously is a phrase we use in terms of marital decisions. But also it has to do with an inauthentic doing one thing while you're saying another. And that's what we see over and over and over again. We see it in terms of affordability and what he does and says, we're going to put caps on interest rates on credit cards. And then all of this news came out this week where that's not happening and states are going to be able to decide their usury laws themselves and determine their own caps. I mean, it's constant looking at the people and saying one thing, and then his administration and greenlighting doing the exact opposite.
It's constant bullshit. Two-timing is a kind of pleasant way of putting it. I say he's a bullshitter, and he's a liar. And I mean, why would anybody go to the State of the Union? Seriously, why should anybody tune in to the State of the Union? I certainly am not going to. Why should I use my precious time sitting there listening to an hour? In fact, he's probably going to go an hour and a half of total Donald Trump bullshit.
What do you think he'll say? It'll be the greatest hits, right? He'll be nasty to Dems. Do you think he'll plug the Melania movie? He'll be horrific to immigrants. He'll mention transgender people.
He'll say the economy has never been as good. The fact of the matter is, most people now think the economy is worse, and they're right, than it was a year ago.
He won't admit that.
He won't admit that.
He'll lie about that.
And then he'll say, I've really conquered the immigration problem. Most people think he's gone way beyond overcoming the immigration problem. He's actually, most people in this country now, on poll after poll after poll, say that he has really abused his authority with regard to immigration. And the economy is lousy. And what else did he run on? He ran on the third plank was no intervention in foreign affairs. He's not going to involve the United States in this kind of constant changing of our attempts to change leadership in other countries. Well, what are we doing? That's exactly what he did in Venezuela and what he wants to do now in Iran. He said that regime change would be a good thing in Iran.
I also think so much of this is a convenient deflection from what's happening in terms of the economy, in terms of the Epstein files. It's like
absolutely
big news, big peace, big war. I mean, it's just going through the greatest hits of lies.
Well, this is why I'm worried about Iran, Heather, because he loses at the Supreme Court on tariffs. He loses public confidence over the economy. His polls are going down. What does a president do, particularly a president who has no feelings of being legitimate or secure in his role? What does he do? He goes to war. This is classic. And unfortunately, I think Donald Trump is going to do it.
This is all so much, but I do think, we're trying to find seeds of hope when we meet for coffee. The SCOTUS, I like that Trump is being held accountable is good, right, for his overstepping his responsibilities. But I do think I met with David Hogg about a month ago, and I love what he's doing in terms of trying to get young people identified and elected and into offices at the state and federal level as part of Leaders We Deserve. So let's have him on and let's get a little breath of hope, shall we? This is so exciting. We have David Hogg. Hello, David. And you and I met couple months ago, and I was thinking, wouldn't it be terrific to have you on the Coffee Klatch with Bob and me, because we try to find seeds of hope, right? We have these little hope stones that sometimes we reference. And I think what you're doing at Leaders We Deserve, we want to hear some of your stories and your perspective. We want reality, but also a little hope would be nice as well. Right, Bob?
Well, David, welcome. Yes, we like hope, and we also like to have young people. You're pretty young. Are you Gen Z? We were debating this.
I am Gen Z. Apparently the line for which is typically determined by whether or not you remember 9/11. And if you don't remember 9/11 or you weren't alive, then you were either Gen Z or Gen Alpha.
I'm so old. I remember when the saying was, don't trust anybody over 30.
Wow.
Do you remember that? No?
No, but you have not lived by that. That's how old you are, and then now we're...
Well, I mean, this was in the 60s. Hello.
Right.
David, we are so pleased by what you're doing.
So Leaders We Deserve, you co-founded it, you run it, and you are helping to elect young progressives to get rid of the status quo, right? Disrupt things. Can you give us some examples of some of the young folks you're helping to get elected, besides Zoran Mamdani? Bravo, by the way, for that. Who are you seeing out there in the world, and what is the energy of people that you're finding who are running for office and then you're helping to get elected?
A lot of the young people that we're seeing out there right now are people like NIDA alum who have their election coming up on March 3rd. And NIDA's running against a establishment Democrat, Valerie Foushee, in a safe congressional district. Obviously, it's a primary that's coming up. And this district has faced some of the largest cuts from DOGE because it's in the North Carolina Research Triangle of any district in the country. And the member of Congress who currently represents there, Valerie Foushee, has repeatedly failed to successfully stand up to help fight back against those DOGE cuts, fight back against ICE or more. And NIDA, her and I, unfortunately, have similar origin stories that are rooted in gun violence, where she got involved in politics after several of her friends were murdered in an anti-Muslim hate crime, and then ended up working for Bernie Sanders, ran for Congress, lost by a pretty slim margin in 2022 in a very crowded primary, then became a county commissioner, helped to raise the minimum wage in the county, lower property taxes for people that are near the poverty line as well, and have done She's done a lot of great work on the county commission, and now she's running there. And this is a really big moment for our organization because there's a lot of people in Washington who think that if you're a Democrat that's in a safe congressional seat, that you can take as much corporate money as you want, you can take as much support from AIPAC as you want, and you're going to be fine. Nobody's ever really going to seriously ever challenge you. Except this cycle, we're seeing that turn around, where right now we've seen polling that's showing that Nita is at basically 50-50 at the moment with her opponent, which is exceptionally rare for a Democratic challenger in a primary against an incumbent. Since 2018, there's only about 8 Democrats that have lost to other Democrats that were challenging incumbents. And this could be a huge shakeup and send a clear message to our party that it's time for people to either get their act together or step aside and let a new generation lead. And I think there's one thing that I got to be really clear on. There are lots of great older people out there too, including in Congress. We're not just challenging somebody,
including on this podcast.
No,
exactly.
Don't include the podcast. David, finish that sentence. But I've got a question for you.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's lots of great older people out there that have done work like Bernie Sanders and are helping to show the next how to lead the next generation and expand the spotlight. And there's lots of young people who absolutely should not be empowered, that are way more corruptible, that are just as bad, if not way worse at their job than a older member of Congress would be. What we specialize in is finding the members that we feel like are truly failing to meet the moment and replacing them with well-qualified, experienced, and principled young people and backing them with real financial support. At Leaders We Deserve, we don't take corporate money. So we rely on support from 240,000 individual donors to back candidates like Nita who don't take corporate money either, so they have an actual chance of winning in their races.
So, David, how do you go about the actual search for these candidates? They are not national candidates. They are not known by definition. How do you find them?
So sometimes it's a combination of ways. We have a whole campaigns team that does research every single day on what seats are not filled right now. And then we try to find younger people to run for those state legislative and congressional seats. Most of Congress is recruited out at this point, so we're really focusing on state leg this cycle for our recruitment before the filing deadlines happen. But the way that works is sometimes we will go through local newspapers to find people who were organizers at local protests for No Kings, or we'll go through and find who were the top students, or were in student government at local colleges, or we'll go through and find who's working in the state legislature right now, and we'll go through their thing called Legistorm, and we'll find, for example, in one state leg district that we're working on recruiting somebody in right now, we ended up finding a potential candidate there because we looked up the Legistorm for that area because it's near the state capitol. And we found somebody who's potentially very interested in running for that seat. So it's a combination of people either coming to us through our website, signing up there. But what we see a lot, Robert, is disproportionately the people that come to us, and this is not just us, it's across the board, disproportionately it's younger men. We actually spend a lot of time telling completely unqualified young men that should not be in Congress or a state legislature that they absolutely should not be there and what they need to do to get more experience to be able to be ready to serve there. And a lot of time as well, trying to convince a lot of well-qualified younger women who just don't think it's their time to run or don't think that they can serve, that they actually can, and they have the experience that we need in office.
So, David, let me ask you a very large, very, very important question. Are you optimistic about the future of the Democratic Party?
I am. And the reason for that is because when we started Leaders We Deserve, part of the reason why I started it was because I studied American history, and a lot of the American history that I studied was in the 20th century, in particular the Cold War and some of the history of the CIA in Central and South America, but I don't need to get into that. Part of what I studied was the end of the Soviet Union. And what I saw was how there were so many people waiting to take leadership positions there that it literally took somebody dying or being killed to be removed from those positions of power. And then eventually there was somebody who waited so long in that position that one person after another died in the leadership of the Soviet Union. And then I looked at the Democratic Party in Congress and I thought, wow, it's not exactly the same, obviously, but we have a party that has empowered so many people with an older electorate of baby boomers that have been there for so long that eventually there is going to be a huge power vacuum that we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fill with candidates who don't take corporate money, who aren't supported by AIPAC, and are truly loyal more than anything to their constituents. And that's why we decided to build Leaders We Deserve. It started out with helping elect my friend Maxwell Frost to Congress. Maxwell worked for March for Our Lives, the organization we started after Parkland. I hired him from my freshman dorm room when I was in college. And then he ended up calling me up 2 years later, and he said, David, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is I have to leave March for Our Lives, and the good news is I'm running for Congress. And I said, Maxwell, you know you're 24, right? You have to be 25 to be elected to Congress. And he said, yes, luckily I'll be old enough by the time I'm elected. And I saw how difficult it was for him to run for office. He had to Uber drive every night from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. while running for Congress. He had to raise nearly $3 million to get elected to that position. And what I realized from that experience was that while it was amazing to see Maxwell get elected, he helped us create the Office of Gun Violence Prevention at the White House that then oversaw the 2 largest one-year reductions in gun homicide in American history. I thought this is so amazing, but I can't imagine how many other young people there are that have marched with us, that have protested with us, that just don't have the resources or the right advice to get elected, especially to state legislatures, where there is so much untapped power that Republicans have tapped into for decades that we really have not stepped up enough to the plate to build. And that's why we built Leaders We Deserve, to effectively be like Emily's List for young Democrats running for state legislatures and Congress, who don't take corporate money and want to focus on taking on the special interests that have brought our generation to the pretty terrible point that we're in right now.
I have a question. So Bob and I spoke last week on our coffee, about how young men are turning against Trump on average, right? Everyone was so scared. Look at how many points he's moved this young male electorate, and many people of color in there. And now you're starting to see the numbers change, right? They don't appreciate what's happening in terms of immigration. They don't appreciate what's happening, especially in terms of the economy and their personal sense of affordability. So does that track with what you're seeing on the ground, that younger folks, as a do you say Gen Zer? Do you say Zoomer?
Zoomer.
So what do we think about these changes we're seeing in the young male, specifically, electorate?
I have a metaphor to describe this, and it's not just young men that are like this. I think it's young people in general. I think it's especially acute for young men that increasingly, as our society progresses, are falling behind in our education system. We know that on average, young men tend to be basically developmentally about a year and a half behind most younger women. And so that already creates its own set of challenges in the first place. And naturally, when you build a more equal society and those men start to struggle more, they're going to feel like, well, it's going to be easier for them to say the reason why I'm not doing as well is because I'm, for example, not going to college as much. It's going to be easier for somebody like Andrew Tate to come along and say the reason you aren't doing so well is because women are, getting more opportunities than you are, instead of explaining, because you associate college, for example, with being there's this phenomenon in sociology called male flight, where as an institution or group becomes seen as more effeminate because it becomes more equal, men to stop participating in it a lot of the time because it's seen as effeminate to go to college, for example. It's a lot easier for somebody like Andrew Tate to say, oh, the reason you're falling behind is because you're being discriminated against as a man, and make millions of dollars off of that message, instead of saying to them, actually, you're a victim of your own internalized patriarchy that is causing you not to do things that are in your own economic best interests, that are then resulting in you being materially worse off than your parents a lot of the time. But the metaphor that I have for this is that last election cycle, we were looking at the data of GDP and the S&P, and we were saying to young people who we know do not own those assets nearly as much as older generations, what do you mean that you feel like the economy isn't doing good right now? The stock market's doing so well, the GDP is doing so well. These macroeconomic figures are telling us what you were telling us that you were feeling isn't actually true. So when you tell people not to believe their wallets, and then when they tell you that the president is too old, and then their response is no, he's not, and then yes, he is 107 days before the election, you're going to lose those people. And effectively, our message, I think, to young voters, in particular young men, sounds like this. Hey, we know that you're telling us that you feel like you're 10 feet underwater right now. What if you were 9 feet underwater? Wouldn't that be better? Because those Republicans, they want to put you at 15 feet underwater. And what young people want isn't to be told, they don't want to be underwater at all. They want to see a hand reach down that actually pulls them to the surface. And when you're in that panicked state, you're going to reach out to whichever hand it is. Politically, it may be on the right. Politically, it may be on the left. You don't care if you are struggling to survive. You're going to look at whatever hand you think is going to pull you to the surface the fastest. And in that environment of us telling them repeatedly, don't believe what you're feeling, you shouldn't believe it because all these numbers are telling us that you shouldn't, they're going to reach out to a different hand that pulls them up. And of course, they've completely failed as Republicans. They ran on making things more affordable. They haven't. They ran on releasing the Epstein files, which they have, that then implicated them very obviously. And in that environment, they're going to come back to Democrats. But the reason for that isn't because we're providing a better message. It's because Republicans have done such a god-awful job. And that may be enough for us to win back the House, but it's not enough for us to build long-term power. And what we are seeing in our data is that, last night I was on a Zoom with John Delvelope, one of the top pollsters that focuses on young people. He's polled young people for the past 20 years. And what he said to us was that what young people are looking for in candidates is not so much their political affiliation. They're looking for similarity in lived experience. There is no better way of doing that than electing younger people and giving them a better shot so that young people can see somebody like Zoran and say, actually, I do feel represented by this person. And guess what? They're doing the most important thing, listening. When Zoran went out there and started campaigning, you know what he didn't do? He didn't do what most politicians do and say, hey, here are all the things that I'm going to do for you. He started out by asking, hey, what do you want to see in a mayor of New York City? What can I do for you? And then he listened to that feedback and actually built a campaign and expanded the electorate so that he was actually able to win. And that's what we're trying to do at Leaders to help solve that problem, is get more people who, for example, when they're talking about lowering rents, it's coming from a messenger who's paid rent in the 21st century. Because you can have the best poll-tested message you want, but if the messenger isn't credible, it doesn't matter. And our party loves to go on and on about messaging. We can A/B test. We can't A/B test our way out of this. When our real problem is a courage problem and a messenger and credibility.
Also, we've seen this stat: 54% of the electorate in 2028 will be millennial and Gen Z. 54%. It's the highest ever.
If they voted. If they
voted.
And I think the interesting thing to me, how important, David, it is to get young people out to vote, to inspire them about politics. I mean, Mamdani did an amazing job in terms of recruiting an army of young people. My 17-year-old granddaughter was going weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, door to door for Mamdani, and so were all our friends. So were thousands and thousands of young people in New York who couldn't even vote yet. I think that to me, is one of the most important lessons for the Democrats from the Mamdani campaign, is get out the vote, get young people involved.
But look at how we treated him, too, through that process. Like, that's the crazy thing about our party. We say, oh my God, we need to win back young people. And then you have a guy like Zoran, who the data show us got 3 times the 18 to 24-year-old turnout of Kamala Harris in his primary. 3 times that turnout. And what did our party do? We said, oh my God, this guy's going to be a disaster. It's a nightmare. We can't support him. We need to all consolidate behind Andrew Cuomo. Even after Zoran won the primary, the same people who always tell us to vote blue no matter who, then we're like, oh my God, there's no way that we can ever talk about Zoran. And the question is to our party, the question that we face is not, can we win back young people? It's, are we willing to empower the candidates that actually resonate with young people? Because it may not be the candidates that are completely aligned with the establishment. But in order for us to win back the House, in order for us to win back the Senate and the presidency eventually, we have to give younger voters candidates that actually resonate with them. And sometimes that's not going to be candidates that the establishment necessarily like.
Also, the GOP is not helping itself. I mean, when you look at Governor Abbott and you know this, you founded or co-founded and ran March of Our Lives, which was, against gun violence and predicated on the power of peaceful protest and getting out and getting your voices heard. And so here we have in Texas all these students who are protesting, leaving school to say, we don't appreciate ICE. And so what does Abbott say? He's cracking down on these schools. That is not going to help in the future. It's
going to backfire.
For them, right?
It'll help the movement. I will tell you that much. You want to get a young person to do something, tell them what not to do, and they will do that thing. Especially teenagers, right?
Well, but also there's a very, very large question in the background, and that is, what is the Democratic Party? Is it a fundraising machine? Is it just big money? Or is the Democratic Party something very, very different from what it's been? I mean, one of the reasons that so much money was behind Andrew Cuomo is that Andrew Cuomo was the establishment, and that's where the money wanted to go. But that assumes that the Democratic Party is big money is the establishment. And I think that what you are saying, David, what the people you are finding and representing are saying is that no, the Democratic Party is something very, very different. It's young people, it's people of color, it's people who want to make the nation different and progressive, and that social justice is very central to the meaning and purpose of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And what we're trying to do, and the reason why our candidates don't take corporate money is because I remember being a 16-year-old voter in Florida, or not voter, but a 16-year-old who was registering to vote after I got my driver's license. And I remember people often ask, in Florida, we have this huge issue with the number one growing political party in Florida is none, the no party affiliations. That is who people are registering to vote with most. And I understand why that's happening. When I was registering to vote as a 16-year-old in Broward County, after I got my driver's license, I remember the person asking me, do you want to be a Democrat, registered as a Democrat or Republican? I said, well, I don't want to be either, because I said to myself, do I identify more with Democrats? Sure, but here's the reality. I feel like both are owned and controlled by the same special interests and corporations that have made our lives suck. So why would I want to associate with a party that I lightly agree with more, but I feel like doesn't properly represent me, because it still represents a lot of the same special interests? And then I eventually registered as a Democrat because the lady at the DMV told me, well, you can't vote in a primary if you're not registered as a Democrat. And I was like, fine, I'm a Democrat. But what I think we need to do as a party is say, we are the party of the 99%. We are the party not of corporations and special interests, but we are the party of the American people. And guess what? We're the party that actively works to make government work. After all, we're the party that helped to create Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And we also need to acknowledge and be honest with voters and say, look, our job is a hell of a lot harder than it is for Republicans, because unlike them, we don't run on the idea that government is terrible, it never can do anything right, and then get elected and make it terrible and make it not do anything right, and then repeat that cycle every election cycle. It is always going to be harder to make something work, and we need to have the right oversight over universal child care programs, over our welfare programs, to ensure that they aren't being abused and that there is as little fraud as possible. But ultimately, we do have a harder job of trying to make government actually work in the first place. But that's what I want our party to represent, so that when young people especially go and register to vote, they know that Democrats, or at least a large segment of our party, doesn't represent special interests. And long term, our party won't represent those special interests. We will represent the American people and what they need most.
I love your passion. So good. Thank you for coming on today, David.
David, thank you.
Absolutely. There's one last thing I want to say too, though, before I go. I have a request of you, if this hasn't been done before. I'm not in college anymore, so I don't have access to all the literature and all the publications that I used to. But I will tell you, the biggest reason why there are not more young people that run for office is not because there aren't young people who don't want to run. It's because it is a major, especially for state legislature, they cannot afford to do it. In many states, you are paid less than $10,000 a year to be a state senator or to be a state representative. And that is part of the reason why there are so many young people that do not run. So I don't know if there is research out there on this, but I would love to talk to you more about how we can get the word out more about part of the reason why our government sucks is because we can only elect people that often are employed or come from those very special interests in the first place that don't actually represent a lot of the majority of people.
That's a very good point. I would love to talk to you about it, David.
Great. And if anybody wants to support us, they can go to leaderswedeserve.com. Because again, we rely on small dollar donations, not corporations. So we really do need people's support to help our candidates get across the finish line and not unilaterally disarm, so that we can get real financial support behind them.
Thank you for all of your work and for coming on today.
Thank you, David.
Well, I like hearing that a young person and his colleagues are paying attention to other young people who are paying attention to other young people and who are building things up.
Building from the base, building from the grassroots, and getting young people involved. That's one of the most important things that we can do. Mamdani did it, and I'm very pleased that David Hogg is doing it.
Me too. So this is why I'm putting a seed of hope. These are from Fern's Garden in Berkeley. I'm putting one in there. Do you know that I have Lego Bob next to me when we do these coffees?
I didn't know that.
So yeah. So it's,
Heather,
cheers.
we've run out of time. I want to thank you again, and let me also thank Michael Johannes Calderon and Kyle Parker and Dan Davis and Naomi Bradford and all the fabulous, talented people who help us every single day. And once again, I want to thank all of you out there. This week, we lost a man who was a true national leader I worked with in the 1980s, 1990s, a man who did something that it's very, very difficult to do. I'm talking obviously about Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson, I remember in 1984 and 1988 ran for the presidency. The speeches he gave at the Democratic National Conventions, both of those years, I think were some of the most important speeches in recent memory about the ideals of America. And what he said, and we'll try to run one of those speeches as we close, but one of the things he says, one of the things Jesse Jackson said had to do with the connection that we have across race, across class, across the boundaries of ethnicity, that what we must do is fight for an America in which, regardless of how you look or who you are, you do have an opportunity to get ahead. You have an opportunity to be heard. Your votes count. You can make something of yourself. Jesse Jackson, rest in peace, and thank you for all the extraordinary leadership you provided America.
See you next week.
See you next week.
If an issue is morally right, it will eventually be political. It may be political and never be right. Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have the most votes in Atlantic City, but her principles have outlasted every delegate who voted to lock her out. Rosa Parks did not have the most votes, but she was morally right. Dr. King didn't have the most votes about the Vietnam War, but he was morally right. If we're principle first, our politics will fall in place. Jesse, why do you take these big, bold initiatives? A poem by an unknown author went something like this: we've mastered the air, we've conquered the sea, annihilated distance and prolonged life, but we're not wise enough to live on this earth without war and without hate. As for Jesse Jackson, I'm tired of sailing my little boat far inside the harbor bar. I want to go out where the big ships float, out on the deep where the great ones are. And should my frail craft prove too slight, the waves that sweep those billows o'er, I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore. We got to go out, my friends, where the big boats are.